In this video we're going to look at adding and subtracting algebraic fractions. Now there are lots of different types of this question, so make sure you watch right through to the end of the video and work through all of the examples. Now the important thing when you're adding and subtracting fractions is you have to understand that you must always have a common denominator. So you can't add fractions together unless the denominator is the same. So looking at this first example, the denominators are 6 and 4. They're not the same. So at the moment, in its current state, I can't add these together, so I'm going to need to change that. Now the way we do that, same with normal fraction questions when there's no algebra involved, we need to create a common denominator. Now the easiest way to do that is to find the lowest common multiple of 6 and 4, the two denominators you already have. So again, the easy way to do that is to start with the 6 here and go up the 6 times table, but stop when you get to a number in the 4 times table. So the 6 times table is 6, that's not in the 4 times table. 12, that is in the 4 times table, so that's the first one that appears in both of those tables. The next thing I have to do is work out what did I have to multiply the bottom number 6 by to turn it into the new denominator of 12, and then repeat that process with the top. So I have to multiply 6 by 2 to get 12, so I need to multiply the top by 2 as well to keep those fractions equivalent to each other. So 2 times x is 2x. On this one, again, what do I need to multiply the 4 by to turn it into this new denominator of 12? I will have to multiply that by 3. Because I've multiplied the bottom by 3, I have to multiply the top by 3. So 3 times y will be 3y. As soon as I've got a common denominator and the top part, so the numerators filled in, then I can add together the fractions. Now, when I add them, they're going to go over a single denominator of 12, and I'm simply going to add 2x and the 3y together. Now this is a little bit different to normal because normally in a normal fractions question you would have just two numbers here, but this time you've got two algebraic terms, so I can't just add them together. 2x plus 3y, I just have to write it as 2x plus 3y. Okay, there's no way of putting them together as they're not like terms, and that's the question finished. I'll now get you to try this question over here, so pause the video, try the question, then press play when you're ready to go over it. So for this example here, we have denominators of 5 and 7, so we don't have a common denominator. So the first thing we need to do is create that. So we're going to put in our two empty fractions here, so fraction plus fraction. And we're going to go up through one of these two times tables until we find another number in the other times table as well. So let's start with the 7. 7 times table goes 7, that's not in the 5 times table. 14, not in the 5 times table. 21, no. 28, no. 35, yes, that's the first one that's in the 5 times table. And that means that's the lowest common denominator for both those, so we can put 35 at the bottom of each. And what we've then got to do is repeat that process we used in the other question. What do I multiply the 5 by to get 35? Well, I have to multiply that by 7, so multiply the top by 7 as well. So 7 times x is 7x. And then again, ask yourself the question, what do I multiply the 7 by to get 35? Well, I need to multiply that by 5, so because I've multiplied the bottom by 5, multiply the top by 5 as well. So 5 times y is 5y. Once I've got the common denominator all sorted out, then I can add the fractions together. Now, denominator is going to be 35, we've already established that, and as was the case before, I can't actually add together the 7x and the 5y because they're not like terms, so I just need to write it as an expression at the top. So it's going to have to stay as 7x plus 5y. This next example is a slightly different type of example. What you'll notice is we have numbers at the top this time, and we have the letters or variables at the bottom, which is the opposite of the way around on the last slide. So same thing applies, so we need to have a common denominator before we can add these fractions. So the first thing I'm going to do is work out what that's going to be. So fraction, take away fraction. Always just kind of set out your empty fractions here. And what you need is you need something down here that's divisible by x and divisible by y. So the easiest way to get that is just to take x and y together. And then basically we're going to go through the same process. So we're going to have a look at this. What do I have to multiply x by to make it into xy? Well, I've had to multiply this x by y. So I've multiplied the bottom by y, multiply the top by y as well. So that'll become 4y. On the next fraction, have a look, you started with y. You've had to multiply it to get this. What do you multiply this by? To get this, you have to multiply it by x. So because I've multiplied the bottom by x, I'm also going to multiply the top by x. So 2 times x gives me 2x. So again, we've got a common denominator now, so we're ready to do the subtraction. So it's all going to be over the single denominator of x, y. And again, I can't actually do 4y take away 2x. These are not like terms, so the best I can do here is write this as an expression 4y minus 2x. So that'll go into one fraction now, 4y minus 2x. And that's it, basically finished. The next example is similar, but it's a little bit more complicated because some of the letters here have powers on them. This is an x squared rather than just an x. But let's have a look at that briefly, then we'll look at a more extreme example just to get you an idea of what you're doing here. So again, two empty fractions, and the first thing I want to do is get a common denominator. Now, the easiest way to do this is go through the letters one at a time. I've got an x squared and an x, so I'm only going to look at the x's to start with. X squared and x. So if I need something that's divisible by both x squared and x, then it'll have to be at least x squared big. So I'm going to put x squared at the bottom of each. And then for this one, because it's got a y at the bottom, looking at the second letter, this doesn't have a y, but these will both need to have y in it to make it divisible by this one here. So y and y. And we'll come back and look at a more extreme case of that so you get an idea of what we're doing there in a minute. Now, again, ask yourself the same questions. What do you multiply x squared by to get x squared times y? Well, you've had to multiply it by this y. So multiply the top by y as well. So it becomes 2y. What do you multiply xy here by to make x squared y? Well, the difference is this wee squared sign. So it's because I've multiplied this x by another x. So if I had to multiply this by x to get x squared y, so multiply the top by x as well, which gives us 5x. And then from there, what we can do is just add together the fractions. So the denominator will become just x squared y. We only need to write it once now because we've put them together. And again, we can't add these two together because they're not like terms. So the best we can do is just write them out as an expression, 2y plus 5x. And that's basically it. Now, when we talked about these kind of powers here and working out what we need to bring, do we put x or x squared or x down at the bottom, then we can have a look at a more extreme example to kind of show you that. So say for instance I had two fractions, it doesn't matter what's at the top, and let's say the denominators are x, y to the 5, z, x cubed, y squared, a squared. So what I would do here is first of all I would recognise I've got four different letters here, x, y, z and a, so I need to examine them on a case by case basis. So look at the x's first. Now if I want a common denominator here, then the first thing I would need to do is check x's. I need basically whatever goes on the bottom in terms of x to be divisible by x and x cubed. Now x cubed is a higher power, so for it to be divisible by this one, it needs to be at least x cubed down here. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the higher power of the two x's. So I've got x and x cubed, that's higher a power, so x cubed will go on the bottom. And then look at the next one. I've got y to the 5 and y squared. Now because it needs to be divisible by at least y to the 5, I'm going to have the y to the 5 at the bottom there, and that'll take care of both of them. So again, we're just taking the higher power of the two. So that's y to the 5, y to the 5. We're going to look at z. There's only one z, okay, so it's just z to the power of 1 is the highest, so z to the power of 1. And then this one we've got a squared, and this is the only fraction that has an a at the bottom of it, so a squared will have to be there at the bottom. So a squared, and that would be the common denominator. So basically you go through the letters one at a time and take the higher of the two powers and make that part of your denominator. We'll just delete that now, and we'll put up a quick question for you to try yourself. So pause the video, try the question, and then press play when you're ready to go over it. Okay, we're going to start with the denominator here. So let's look at our denominators. We've got x and y, obviously they have powers on them as well. So let's have a look at our common denominator here first of all. Now let's do it letter by letter. I've got x squared and x cubed. Remember, I need to take the higher of the powers of x. So the x cubed is the higher power. It's higher than the x squared here. So I'm going to put x cubed at the bottom of both. That's dead straightforward. And then look at the y's. I've got y squared and y to the power of 1. Y squared is the higher of the two powers, so y squared can go at the bottom of both. And that's a good way to kind of get our common denominator here. Now, what I need to do is ask myself, what have I multiplied this denominator by to get this new denominator? The y squared was there. It's still there, so I've not multiplied by any y's. X squared, though, has turned into x cubed, which means I must have multiplied by another x. So because I've multiplied the bottom by x, I need to multiply the top by x. So 4 times x gives me 4x. The next one here, let's have a look at the x's first. Well, x cubed is here, and it's still x cubed, so I've not multiplied by any x's. but y here has turned into y squared, so I must have multiplied the bottom here by a y to bring the power up from 1 to 2. Okay, so I've multiplied the bottom part by y, meaning I need to multiply the top part by y as well. So 5 times y is 5y. And then I can write it as a single denominator. So it's x cubed y squared was the denominator we chose. And then again, I can't actually add them together because they're not like terms, so I just need to write them as an expression, 4x plus 5y. So that's 4x plus 5y. This next question here is the third type of example, and the way it's different is we're going back to having numbers at the bottom try and help us find our common denominator. But at the top here, we don't just have a single number or single term, we've actually got an expression, so the x plus 3 rather than just say x or just 3. And another expression here, 2x minus 1. So that makes it a little bit different, and we need to bear that in mind when we start this question. Start off in the same way though, we are going to get a common denominator. So remember, 2 and 3 are our denominators, so we need to find the lowest common multiple. So go up your 3 times table, stop when you get to a number that's also in the 2 times table. So that's going to be 6. Same process again, whatever I multiply the bottom here by, to get this new bottom part, I multiply the top by the same amount. So if I had to multiply the 2 by 3 to get 6, because I multiply the bottom by 3, multiply the top by 3. Now this is where I need to be careful, because I'm actually multiplying all of this by 3, I'm going to group it together in a set of brackets, because I want to multiply the whole expression by 3. So 3 bracket x plus 3. Remember, that means 3 times this x plus 3 here. We're going to move on to the next one. We've got 3 as our denominator, and I need to multiply that by 2. So I need to multiply the bottom by 2. So I'm going to multiply the top by 2 as well. And we're going to do that in the same way. We want to multiply everything there by 2. So I'm going to put 2 times a set of brackets. And it's all of this I want to put in the brackets, because all of that I want to multiply by 2. Now, before you start to multiply out brackets here, what's always a good idea is to take this negative from the bottom and move it up. In other words, actually bring it together to be a single fraction, because otherwise people will make mistakes with this sign and they'll end up with probably a mistake on the last number in your answer. So just be really careful, bring that negative up, make it one fraction first. So that's 3 bracket x plus 3 minus 2 bracket 2x minus 1 all over 6. The only thing that's left to do then is to quickly multiply out these brackets and simplify what's on the top. So we're going to do that step by step. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 3 is positive 9. And then being careful here, that's not a 2 we're multiplying this by, this is negative 2. So again, negative 2 times 2x is negative 4x, and negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. So that's all over 6. The last thing we need to do is simply collect like terms on the top. So 3x, take away 4x is negative x. And then if we start at positive 9, add 2, we end up with positive 11. So plus 11. And that's all over 6. Now I'm just going to put some equals at the start there, and that's basically that question done. Again, the most important thing to remember here is don't try and multiply out the brackets until you've kind of put it together as one fraction. Otherwise, this negative can sometimes get a bit lost, and people forget that they're multiplying by negative 2 rather than just 2. So always bring it together before you multiply out the brackets and simplify. I'll now put up a question for you to try yourself, so pause the video here, try the question, and then when you're ready to go over it, press play. Okay, so first thing we're going to do in this question is we are going to put together our empty fractions, and we're going to think about our common denominator of 3 and 4, lowest common multiple. Go up your 4 times table and stop when you get to a number in the 3 times table as well. So 4, no, 8, no, 12. Yep, that's in the 3 times table. So 12 is my lowest common denominator. And then what do I multiply 3 by to get 12? I have to multiply the bottom by 4, so multiply the top by 4. And remember, when you're multiplying the top here, because it's an expression, you want to multiply all of it by 4, so you write 4 times the bracket, and you put the thing you want to multiply by 4 in the bracket. Same here, 4 times what is 12? So I have to multiply the bottom by 3, so multiply the top by 3 as well. So I want to multiply the whole expression at the top by 3, that's x minus 3, so 3 times all of this. And then remember, what I said was really important is you bring this negative up to the middle here and you write it as a single fraction before you start multiplying out the brackets. So we're just going to take one line to do that quickly. 4 bracket x plus 6 minus 3 bracket x minus 3 all over 12. And that way this negative here isn't going to get lost and people won't think that this is a 3 rather than what it really is, which is a negative 3 here. So multiply out the brackets. Let's start by 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 6 is positive 24. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Okay, and that's all over 12 still. And remember, the last thing we need to do here is just to collect together like terms. So 4x, take away 3x, leaves me with positive x. And positive 24 plus another 9 leaves me with positive 33. And that's all over 12. And that's basically that question complete. This last example is the final type of example, which we have an expression on the bottom and a number on the top. Now this is by far the most common question that we see in exams, so make sure we can do this one. Okay, so x plus 1 and x minus 3 are my denominators. This question is actually easier in a lot of ways than some of the other ones because the common denominator is a lot easier to kind of work out. I've got x plus 1, so whatever's at the bottom needs to be divisible by all of this expression x plus 1. And also needs to be divisible by all of this expression x minus 3. Now the easiest way to put that together is simply to combine or multiply those two together. So I have two sets of brackets on the bottom, x plus 1, x minus 3, and x plus 1, x minus 3. Now, once you've done that part, it's the same process from there onwards as we've used in all the other examples. What have I multiplied this x plus 1 by to get this new denominator by? Now you can see the x plus 1 is there, so I must have multiplied it by this x minus 3. This is the new bit. So I've multiplied the bottom by x minus 3, which means this 6 needs to be multiplied by x minus 3 as well. So the way I would write that is 6 times x minus 3. Now, if you think about that, if I want to know, this is definitely the same value as this, imagine I cancelled out this x minus 3 and this x minus 3. Now, I don't obviously want to do that, but if I had cancelled out these two x minus 3s, then I'd just be left with 6 over x plus 1, which is what we started with. Obviously, I don't want to cancel them out, I've just put them there. So this x minus 3 here, what have I multiplied this denominator by to get this new denominator down here? Now, the x minus 3 is still there. This is the new part I've multiplied it by. So I've multiplied the bottom by this x plus 1. So I need to multiply the top here also by x plus 1. So that's 3 times x plus 1. Now, like the previous example we did, the most important thing here is before I start to try and multiply out the brackets on the top, then I need to make sure that I bring this negative up and write this as a single fraction. I want that negative really clearly connected to this 3 here. So take your time with this, don't rush it by multiplying out the brackets as it stands, always rewrite it. 6 bracket x minus 3, take away 3 bracket x plus 1, all over x plus 1, x minus 3. Remember, we go down to that single denominator when I combine the two of them. Now I'm ready to multiply out the brackets. So what I can do is 6 times x and 6 times negative 3. That's going to give me 6x minus 18. And then I'm also going to go and do the second one. Remember, I'm multiplying by negative 3 times x, negative 3 times 1. So be careful with the signs there. That's negative 3x and negative 3. And that's all over the bottom, x plus 1, x minus 3. Now you'll notice I'm not multiplying out the bottom brackets. I'm going to leave them as they are. I am going to now simplify the top part though. So 6x, take away 3x, would leave me with 3x's. And starting at negative 18 and taking away a further 3 would bring me down to negative 21. Okay, and then I have my two denominators, x plus 1 and x minus 3. Now that would get you full marks in the exam. You could also actually factorise the top part there and check that nothing cancels with the bottom, but I think we're okay there. That's not going to be the case here. So again, I'm going to write out a you try question. So pause the video here, try the question, and then press play when you're ready to go over it. Okay, so we're going to start off with our two fractions. Now you remember you need to make these a little bit bigger. Our common denominator here, if I want it to be divisible by both x minus 2 and x minus 1, then it needs to be an x minus 2 down here and an x minus 1. So let's put them in, x minus 2, x minus 1, x minus 2, x minus 1. And then we're using the same process as we used from the very first question. What do I multiply this x minus 2 by to get this new denominator? Well, the x minus 2 is still there. This is the bit I've obviously multiplied it by. So because I've multiplied the bottom by this, I need to multiply the top by x minus 1 as well. So it's 4 times x minus 1. What have I multiplied x minus 1 by to get this new denominator? So x minus 1 is already there. So I must have multiplied by this x minus 2. So again, I multiplied the bottom by x minus 2. I need to multiply the top by x minus 2 as well. So it's 3 bracket x minus 2. Really important, as I've said before, that you bring it all together as one single fraction before you start breaking out the brackets or multiplying out the brackets. So that's all over my two brackets, x minus 2, x minus 1. And then I can start to multiply out the brackets. So 4 times x, 4 times negative 1, negative 3 times x, and negative 3 times negative 2. That's going to give me, let's see, that's going to be 4x minus 4 minus 3x plus 6 all over my two brackets, x minus 2, x minus 1. And that will come to a total of, let's see, I've got 4 x's here, take away 3 x's, leaves me with positive 1x. And we have a starting point of negative 4 here, and we're adding on 6 to that, which is going to bring me up to positive 2. And that's all over x minus 2, x minus 1. And that is effectively it.